Good afternoon, colleagues. Good morning, good evening. I know that there was a little bit of confusion for some of you but about the 12 GMT. Some of them connected a little bit earlier, but I hope you all found your way. I see that we're close to 120 people connected, so I think we're almost all there. A number of people will not be able to make it, but they will try to join later or try to follow other parts. Let me thank in particular, first of all, the colleagues from the Far East and the colleagues from the Far West. I know that for some of you, this is incredibly late. And for others, like I guess Helga, the people in Canada, this must be incredibly early as well. And I really appreciate that you're doing the effort, because I think it is important that we're having this this training. We're in for 3 hours, more or less today, another 3 hours tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. If that is sufficient, normally we should be able to cover all the most important aspects. Now, why are we doing this? Well, I guess the more experienced evaluators will probably know as well that each mission is a learning experience, and you pick up something, and there are some lessons learned. And I thought it was together with Nicolas and Guy, we thought it was a good idea if we use this opportunity to look a little bit at the past missions and see what can be learned from this. So you will see that we're taking a number of IDs and assessments from 2016 all the way till 2022, and the hope that this is something that is useful not only for the more junior evaluators, but also for the more senior evaluators, that there is something that can be picked up for you as well. And not only for you, but I must say for us as a secretariat as well. Each year is a learning curve. We try to get better. We try to do better, and we're of course open as well for suggestions from your side to see how we can do things differently, how we can do things better. Just to remember as well here that the session is recorded, so we'll see if we make it available. But for some, if you wish to check it again, some passages, we can share that with you after the session. Konstantina, if that's okay, I'll quickly start with the presentation. The idea is that I start with a basic presentation about, so that we have a presentation of UNESCO's involvement. Why is it important that UNESCO is engaging in these evaluations? What's the importance for us? What's our role in this whole process as well? What are the lessons that we learned from this? And then in the next part, Nicolas will go more into the details, specifically of the different criteria that you are looking into as an evaluator when you're going on a mission to the field. He's going to highlight in particular the geological heritage, but also education, research, selling of geological material, the conservation of geological heritage, where there's overlapping sites, sustainable tourism, and networking. So that's the part that Nicolas will bring afterwards. And then that will be followed by Guy, who will follow up on similar criteria that are of importance for geoparks, but then basically focusing on boundaries, on visibility, on the involvement of the local communities and the indigenous people, concluding with a number of points regarding the behavior, the whole experience of a mission, the things to look out for in terms of health, in terms of security. And I hope that we have then still more or less half an hour left for some exchanges for some questions before we conclude today. The session tomorrow has been designed in a more interactive way. We asked a number of more experienced evaluators to share their lessons learned, their hints, their tips for senior and for junior evaluators, to share with us as well the particularities of the region where they come from. And for example, Helga Chulipin will speak more about Latin American geoparks. What are the things that we have to keep in mind when we assess geoparks there? Jiang Ping will speak more about the Chinese geoparks. Van will highlight the perception of geoparks in Asia. And so there's a number of people that will bring very short presentations, but a little bit their lessons learned, because some people have more than 40 missions on their record. And I think there's a wealth of information that they can share with us. And the idea is that from there, we have a more interactive discussion with you as well to see how we can do things differently, better, how we can learn and just to make sure that we just keep on strengthening the entire governance of the geoparks governance. So that's a little bit the setup for the 2 days. In my presentation, I wanted to start as well to introduce my team. I think Özlem Adıyaman is known to most of you. Marie-Laure may be known as well to many of you. She's been the institutional memory here of the program. She is doing much more than just the administrative support. And there is Aranya as well, Aranya Sabo. She joined us, she's from Saudi Arabia. She joined us as a junior professional officer 9 months ago, but she's also supporting us with the 2 angles of the program. So if there is any question regarding the process, whatever question related to the governance or to the process, please feel free to reach out to any of us. So the presentation that I'm going to bring is going to be structured around these questions. And why is UNESCO working on Earth heritage and Earth sciences? I thought it was important that we just remember again how UNESCO Global Geoparks relate to UNESCO and to UNESCO's program. Then I quickly wanted to set as well the UNESCO Global Geoparks versus the other UNESCO site denominations. And then what is UNESCO's Secretariat, our role in this whole evaluation process. So why is UNESCO working on Earth sciences? Well, for those who are a little bit more familiar with the program, you may know that UNESCO started actually out of the ashes of the Second World War. And while the initial focus was focused on education and culture, they quickly realized as well that without scientific cooperation, we wouldn't get very far either. And so the first attempt was made back in the 60s, at the end of the 60s, but very quickly they realized that we should strengthen as well the Earth Science cooperation. And so there was an attempt made in 1968, but the meeting that was supposed to establish the International Geoscience Program was held in Prague. And that was just the time that the Russian tanks were rolling in the city. So it had to be postponed for another a couple of years. But in 1972, the International Geoscience Program was established. And since then, UNESCO has been investing very much in this Earth Science cooperation, because we are within the UN system actually the only organization that is specifically focusing on this discipline of science. And if you see here in 1972, the cooperation, well, of course, we're looking into plate tectonics. It was, of course, a different reality. We were as well in the, we had to deal with the Cold War. So you see that it was basically an East-West opposition. And despite these political tensions, we always tried and managed to work together to bring American scientists together with Russian scientists, for example. So that's very much the DNA of the program, and that continues to be so. Well, today, of course, the cooperation is much more a North-South cooperation. And in all of our projects, we try to involve as much as possible research groups and researchers and geologists from the South. So this International Geoscience Program that has been established in 1972, we celebrated last year. Well, actually, this year we had a real celebration. We celebrated the 50th anniversary of that program. And we keep on reshaping it in order to make it and to keep relevance for society. And in 2015, UNESCO adopted the UNESCO Global Geoparks. They didn't want to create a separate program for UNESCO Global Geoparks, so it was integrated under the International Geoscience Program to make the International Geoscience and Geoparks Program. And you will see that since then, in 2015, we were 120 geoparks. Since then, we have moved on in quite a lot of different ways. UNESCO Global Geoparks and other site designations. And just to remind again, for those who are a little bit less familiar with it, UNESCO Global Geoparks, of course, you all know, biosphere reserves and World Heritage sites are much older as a site denomination. They're both dating back to 1971 and 1972, respectively. So their network is, of course, much more elaborated. They're also pretty much different in approach, and I will maybe show this with this overview. I can share this with you if you're interested, but basically the World Heritage, let's say, is clearly based on a convention. It's intergovernmental. It's ambassadors, it's politicians who are deciding about it. There's a much stronger political interest as well which makes the whole assessment process a little bit more complicated in many ways. What is of importance for us is that World Heritage looks at outstanding universal value. An outstanding universal value, you can, if you would have to summarize it in one phrase, you can say them. It's the kind of thing you don't have 5 of them in the world. It's so unique that the whole world engages itself to protect it, basically. So there are more than 1,000 sites in 167 member states, but there's only 8% of them, only 8% of them are sites that are inscribed for their particular geology. I think that was one of the reasons as well that that pushed the development of geoparks. Biosphere reserves are more about biodiversity and have a similar concept as geoparks in terms that they're also fostering the sustainable development. And is really trying to reconcile how to protect an area in cooperation with the local communities, making sure that the local communities are involved and that they are benefiting from it. And then UNESCO Global Geoparks, as you all know, the difference between the two is that biosphere reserves are also intergovernmental. UNESCO Global Geoparks are international, are experts driven. And that's where the story comes to you as well. It's very much a program that is driven by experts, controlled by experts, fostered and coached by experts. And sometimes our member states have some problem to understand this. When I'm walking around here at UNESCO, when I have to defend it at the executive board of the General Conference, they're a little bit surprised to see the differences with the other programs. But in many ways, I think it has a very strong governance. And the fact that we're meeting here today to train you is basically another aspect that contributes to that strength of that governance. What I mean is basically explained here. If you look at World Heritage, yes, there is an upfront field visit, and it's by IUCN experts or ECOMOS experts, but that's basically where it stops. Once there's been a mission on the field, it becomes a World Heritage site, and then every 6 years there's a periodic reporting, but basically it can keep on being World Heritage unless there is a serious complaint about it or if they're really not managing the site anymore. For biosphere reserves, it's even more different. It's every 10 years. There's just a report sent to UNESCO, but basically there is no more field visit. There is actually never a field visit. Whereas for UNESCO Global Geoparks, as you know, there is a field visit before becoming a geopark, but then every 4 years there's a new mission just to make sure that that the standards are upheld. So that's just to explain a little bit the difference between the 3 UNESCO site denominations. Now, what's UNESCO Secretariat? What is our role? What is our expectation? Basically, what do we expect from evaluators? What do we expect from this whole evaluation program? Well, basically, what you see there to the left, that's basically the Bible. That's the statutes of the International Geoscience and Geoparks program, and that comes together with the operational guidelines. I have this hanging above my bed. I should know this by heart, and I think many of you probably are very familiar with this as well. While it is the Bible, it still leaves a lot of room for interpretation. It's not going to tell you exactly how a geopark is run or how it has to be run and what you have to look at it. It describes in big ways the different criteria that are important that make a geopark, but that in itself will not be sufficient for somebody to start establishing a geopark or for you to control the geopark. So we have to look at these different aspects. And I think Nicolas and Guy will build in their presentation as well specific examples that give us a better idea of how to interpret these different criteria in order to exclude to the maximum a subjective approach, so that no matter where you go in the world, if it's a geopark in Peru or a geopark in Papua, that you have the same approach to that site. Quickly bringing all these here on this slide, because I think this is a handy overview that explains a sometimes complicated process. And I think many of you will be familiar with it, but allow me still to give to mention a few points of attention. It is quite a long process between receiving a letter of intent here at headquarters and becoming an actual geopark. There's more than 2 years that goes in between. I think one thing that we all have to be aware of is that once we receive the application file, there is an important work done before we actually put this online. Once we receive this as a secretariat, we should look to make sure that it's complete. But of course, we do much more than that. We see if the geological description is solid enough, if there's a good inventory, if the boundaries are good, if the name is not odd. So there's a few things that we try to find out before we actually place it online. But once we place it online, it has to be placed online for 3 months. And that's what we call the intergovernmental check. And this year, for example, there's a number of you that have been asked to assess new applications. Well, this year you're going to have to wait until the 6th of June because it was put online from the 5th of March till the 5th of June. We have to wait until then to make sure that there is nobody complaining about a site or raising questions about a site. Okay. Then, yes, maybe a question that I want to throw in the group here. We as a secretariat, and I think this year we're going to involve much closer than in previous years the council in this exercise as well. We have 30 new applications. Now, how can we assess these applications before we actually send a mission to see if there is any premature sites? We've seen as well that in the past there's been a few sites that were visited, and once the evaluator come back, they say, actually, we never should have gone there because it was already clear on paper that this was not a viable site. Now, there's nothing in the statutes that says that we cannot, and basically we always have to send an evaluation. But still, I think there are certain conditions, there are certain proposals that are weak in many aspects, and if they cannot be corrected between the time of application and the time of mission, maybe we have to get back to the member state or to the geopark site and say, why don't you wait another year? Now, that's a very complicated exercise, and I'm just throwing it in the group here to see if there is something that we can learn and something that we can do, where we can identify shortcomings before actually engaging the geopark in an expensive mission. And you're going to bring eventually 2 evaluators to a site that already on paper you see that it's just too weak to become a geopark. Now, with this slide, this is just a little bit the overview that I'm showing here. Well, the missions in the past year were all a little bit messed up because of COVID, and you will see later we're still coping with that. But wherever we try, we have the obligation to send 2 evaluators. Of course, if the situation doesn't allow for it, we have to take exceptional measures. And as I said, the last years we were not able to conduct missions in certain parts of the world. The last country to open was China, and you will see that this year we're trying to catch up with a number of these outstanding missions in China. We also have regular calls for evaluators, and so we try to build up a roster, and you will see later that in terms of geographic balance, we're not there yet, so there's still a lot of margin. I don't think we're going to have another call this year. Our first priority was actually to upscale, is probably not the word that I should use, but to bring as many as junior evaluators to a senior level, because that's at the senior level, that's basically our limiting factor. We don't have enough senior evaluators for the number of missions that we're dealing with. So our first priority is to make sure that we get a maximum of junior evaluators into the system and to get them more than 4, 5, 6 missions. Now here, an important part of the evaluation is, of course, the IUGS assessment. And I cannot underline this enough, but this is incredibly important, because very often this is already an indicator where you have strong geoparks or where you have weak geoparks. And I think you see it already in the applications that sometimes the IUGS experts know that the territory is very solid and it has a very impressive geology. But if it doesn't come with the application, if the applicant doesn't manage to explain it properly, that's already an indication that they may probably not have very well understood the different aspects of geoheritage. They may not have found all the different international references in journals, for example, and it cannot be the task of IUGS to do this. So for you as an evaluator, I think it is important as well, when you look at the application file and you look at the assessment of IUGS, you put all this together, and if it's necessary, you try to find more information when you're on the field visit. You try to see if there is more references yourself as well. What I mean is that try to do a little bit your assessment as well with the material that you get prior to the actual mission, and then checking it once you're there in the field. So this is quickly an overview here of the past mission, 2021. Of course, we were coming out of COVID. There were less missions, but we did what we could, at least in Europe and in a number of countries in Latin America. 2022 was already going better. We had 67 missions already last year, which was quite a lot. 71 evaluators were involved in this whole process. And this year we're facing 83 missions. So it keeps on increasing. 83 missions this year, it's probably more than ever. And that's because we have a lot of revalidation missions this year. And a number of you are probably going to be revalidated this year. And I know that it's challenging to be an evaluator at the same year that you're being revalidated yourself. So for those who are in that case, I absolutely appreciate your commitment. So 83 assessments, also because we have quite a number in China. If you look at the evaluators demographics, well, there's 58 senior evaluators, so that's a little bit where we are limited. We have 118 junior evaluators, and we try to push a maximum of them towards the senior evaluator status. But you see that definitely at the senior evaluators, we have a lot of them from Europe and North America, quite a number as well from Asia Pacific, but very few, for example, from Latin America and well, Arab states are missing. We're getting there, but I think it's of course this comes together with the distribution of geoparks. If you don't have geoparks in these regions, you can't have really the experts in the field either. So that's work in progress. Just as a background here as well, it's the UNESCO Global Geoparks Bureau that is selecting the evaluators by mission. So this is a very complicated puzzle that we're in right now. I'm doing this with my colleagues together with Nicolas, with Guy. We're trying to see the matching profiles, see who is available. As I said, a lot of you people are less available than other years because you are being revalidated, and we totally understand this. So we're never going to impose a mission. We're totally flexible there. At the same time, we have to find 83 missions. Somebody has to conduct them. So that's a little bit the puzzle where we are in. And once we have an agreement of the availability of the evaluators, we are establishing the contact with the geopark. We put you in contact with each other. We copy as well the National Commission, and then where relevant, the field office colleagues as well, so that they can assist from their side if it's necessary, be it with visa arrangements or with logistic arrangements. And I think that's it, what I wanted to say about this slide. A last point here that is surrounded in red: the mission program must have the approval of UNESCO prior to the mission. I will come back to the mission program, but it's important that this is seriously discussed between you and the sides before accepting the mission. And it's an important work, and it has to come to UNESCO Secretariat as well before we can give the green light with the mission. What you get from us when you're set up for a mission is, of course, the guidelines for UNESCO Global Geopark field inspection missions. Some of you will know them by heart, but for those who are less familiar with it, have a look at it as well. Then, of course, you get the application form A and B if it's a revalidation. You will get from us the desktop IUGS evaluation. How does IUGS see the candidate? And then, and this is important, you get a letter as well with the previous recommendations. And I would say, have a look as well at the previous council reports to see the discussion that was held on these sites. And if you want, we can give you that information as well. We can also give you the previous evaluation report if you consider that relevant. But it's always good to see actually how a geopark is developing through time. Now, this is here a checklist, and it is just for you to remember what are the things that we have to do together. There's a lot of things that you have to do together with the geopark in question to make sure that the program has been discussed and agreed mutually. To the right, I put a few points of attention in terms of COVID. COVID can come back. COVID can still be relevant in some countries, so have a look at that as well. It may be necessary to do a PCR test, although I think for most of the countries that we are now having under the radar, there are no more specific requirements for COVID. What I wanted to say as well is that as an evaluator, you are expected to have a valid travel insurance that covers you for any accidents during your mission. This is not UNESCO's obligation. And you are also in charge of arranging your visa together, of course, with the geopark and with the local governments, and there as well our colleagues in the field can support you if that's needed. So if there is anything, if there is any question regarding to visa arrangements or to insurance arrangements, please call us, contact us, and we can see how we can help you. But in no way UNESCO can be held responsible for the reimbursement of any costs related to this. Now, in terms of the program, I think you have to count at least 3 days in the field. That's, I think, a minimum, counting 2 days for travel. So the mission will quickly take you about 5 days. Now, if you look at this mission schedule, that's 4 days on the spot, but this was, for example, for Trollfjell. That's a very large area. And so they proposed a 4-day on the spot, which is, I think, appropriate if you want to cover all the most important aspects of such a large territory. In terms of program, I think there is no clear-cut template, but if you receive it, if you work on it together with the geopark, I mean, these are now a number of examples. I think the format doesn't matter too much, but you have to make sure that you have a clear idea of the timing, that it's a realistic timing as well. It doesn't have to be a race from one geosite to the other geosite. It's your responsibility as well to make sure that you cover all the different important aspects of a geopark throughout that mission, that you manage to meet the most important people, that you manage to see the most important sites, but that you have some time as well to see educational aspects, a museum, for example, to speak with some partners of the museum. So that it's not only a press moment, but that you see the large diversity that a geopark covers. This is another example that we've seen from a program, a mission program. They put the pictures of the people on it, and I think it's not bad. Like this, you know who you're going to see. You can recognize the person when you meet him or her, but that's not compulsory. It's just an idea that we wanted to show here. So these are other programs. This was for Plata Bergen. They give, for example, the itinerary. It can help you just to have an idea before traveling to the site, where you're going to travel through, what are the places you're going to see. It helps you to visualize already a little bit the mission. And maybe it helps you to see as well if there's anything that needs to be corrected. This is here another example. I think this was from Ries, but we've seen a similar one from Mellerdal, where they actually connect the different aspects of your visit with the different SDGs, the different topics that they want to highlight, and the different geopark themes. I think, again, there is no compulsory template, but it's important if you go through this program with the geopark that you do this seriously, because it's a very important part of the mission, this preparation. I also wanted to say something about the logo, because from the questions that I get here, I understand that there's a lot of confusion about it. And I understand it because UNESCO took a new policy last year. We took a new policy basically because it was a bit of a mushrooming of different logos, and it wasn't clear anymore for UNESCO actually what was now correct and what was not correct. So in the new logo policy, there is now one standard, one generic logo that can be used for geoparks. It's the one you see here to the left, UNESCO Global Geopark, just with the temple and the symbol. If the geopark overlaps with other sites, of course, they can be mentioned there as well. It can be done in different colors. It can be translated in the national language, but normally that's the generic logo that the geopark should use. It can be used, of course, in combination with with your geopark specific logo, like the example you see here from Estrella. One can be put one next to the other, but at no point, at no time, we should see, for example, the UNESCO temple or the UNESCO name on a bottle of wine or a bottle of olive oil or other commercial products. That's basically what UNESCO wants to avoid as well. I wanted to put this here up as well because the UK has asked UNESCO if there is a possibility to have a UNESCO geopark specific one, like UNESCO Shetland Global Geopark. And it has been granted. I'm going to spare you the details, but basically it can be done if the national commission of that country agrees to do it. UNESCO cannot do it for you, but if the UNESCO Global, the national commission agrees to do it, you can have your name combined with the generic logo. I know that it's happening in the UK, it's happening in Germany as well. But if other national commissions are willing to do it, you're free to ask them, and this is also an option. Now, these are here then the geopark specific logos, your own logo. What is important is that in your own logo, we don't see the name UNESCO, or we don't see the temple, for example. So the one here of Katla Geopark, the old logo, that cannot be used. The one of Parco del Begua, where you have under it UNESCO Global Geopark, that cannot be used anymore. And sometimes I'm asked about people, but then our proud partners, how can they show that they're a partner of UNESCO? And I understand that it's a recurrent question, and we're actually investigating this together with our colleagues of communication to see what we can propose for example, restaurants or museums that are a partner of the geopark. How can they actually express that they are a partner of UNESCO Global Geopark and not just to use the geopark specific logo? So hopefully more about this. In any case, those who become geopark, they get the whole logo kit with us with the different instructions. They know how to use it. But when you go to a geopark as an evaluator, I would say be a little bit flexible as well at some point, because we're in a transition period. And a lot of the panels, for example, you're still going to see the old logos, and we know that they are in a transition. We tell them we're not logo police. We're not there to find them once they change the panels, for example, that then they use the correct logo. That's very agreeable, but we don't want them we don't want to impose important costs just to get the logo right. Now, I wanted to mention a few things that came up when we started assessing the different geoparks that were deferred in the past. And later onwards, I will speak as well to those about those that were rejected, because we just wanted to see for what reason they were deferred, and is there anything we can learn from this. And at one point in my presentation, we're going to look as well to see, was this actually predicted by the evaluator or not? And I think this is also an important learning exercise. Now, if we look at the main reasons of deferral, well, one that comes up very often, if not almost in every case, is of course is the weakness of the management. And I think it's an important point to look at as an evaluator to see if the geopark is properly understood, right? There were 34 deferrals in the period 2016-2022. 26 times this was mentioned as being the core problem. So it's a make or break. If you have a strong geopark management, the visibility will be strong. There's going to be good educational exercises. The geoheritage will be properly understood. It will be combined with the culture of the area, with the nature of the area. People will have the sentiment that they're part of it. But if it's a weak management, well, then immediately all the other aspects are much weaker as well. So it's really a very important aspect to look into. And if we look at this particular part in the recommendations, and recurrent recommendations are, well, the need of a legal management body. And I think as an evaluator is one of the first things you have to look into. What's the structure of that management body? How strong is it to resist the time? Are local communities, are indigenous populations involved, but really properly involved? Is there a master plan? Is there an action plan? Is there a plan for the next 4 years, 5 years with funding provision? A recurrent issue in some countries is as well the overlap with other designations. And I think it's not a surprise if I make your reference to, for example, France or Italy or Spain, where you see that a lot of geoparks are built on the parcs régionaux naturels or Parco Nazionale in Italy. And in itself, that shouldn't be a problem. We see that most of the geoparks in those countries are actually based on national parks or nature parks. And that provides them with a certain strength as well. You see that it's built on a management body that is competent, that has been running sites already for a long time. So it can work very well. But we have to make sure that there is a proper distinction between what is the function of a national park and what's the function of the geopark. If you want to become a UNESCO Global Geopark, there should be specific activities dedicated to the geopark. There should be a visibility, a clear logo. There should be a branding. And that's sometimes where some of the candidates were struggling with. I'm mentioning here Normandie Maine, Armorique, that was last year, Magella as well before that. And in the meanwhile, they became a geopark. So it's not something that cannot be overcome, but it's something that is important for you as an evaluator to look into. That there should be formal agreements signed between UNESCO designations. If there's a World Heritage Site, for example, in the territory, but it's important that they work together, but that is somehow formalized as well, this cooperation. Now, problems with geological heritage is mentioned 16 times. Guy and Nicolas will go much more into the details with concrete examples on this. What I would say is that you already see it from the IUGS reviews. Sometimes there are diverging reviews. Sometimes they say IUGS says that they didn't have really sufficient material to assess the site. So that's already a little bit of an indication. In some places, the evaluators noticed that some of the sites were really not well protected. So that's really a point of attention as well. Selling geological material, it was mentioned 3 times, and of course that's really something that is not acceptable in a geopark. It's very clearly mentioned in the statutes as well, and we have to be very strict about this, making sure that there's sufficient conservation measures taken for the more fragile sites. That there's a guarantee that there's a full-time geologist. I know that we have lengthy discussions about this with several of the geoparks, but it's an important part that has been very often one of the reasons why a site has been deferred in the past. I'm mentioning here as well the very similar geology with a neighboring geopark. And this is something that happened, well, it happened for Rinjani Lombok in Indonesia, for Grevana Kozani, for Estrella, Quarta Colonia. So all these sites at some point had to provide an independent comparative analysis to demonstrate to what extent they are actually different from the geopark nearby them, just to make sure that they basically celebrate that diversity, that they celebrate that complementarity, and that they're not too similar one next to each other. And what is next to each other? Well, basically the line that we're drawing here is 100 kilometers, but this is it's a bit of a sentimental thing as well. You have to feel this. I mean, 100 kilometers is different when you're in a desert than when you're in Luxembourg, for example. So it's just, let's say, when it's around that 100 kilometers, that's where a warning light should go off. We've had a case last year as well with Book, where we noticed that actually it's too close to another geopark, and so they're going to have to come back with such an analysis, which probably will not be a problem, but it's just to say, is for you as an evaluator, be aware of this as well. Normally, this is our obligation. As a secretariat, we should be vigilant for this, and probably the council members as well. But for you as an evaluator, just look out for this as well. Lack of visibility, well, that comes back in almost every case. It can be the main reason for deferral, but very often it's something that comes exactly because there is a weak management. Again, I will not go in the details. Guy and Nicolas will explain this much more, but just make sure that it's not just a collection of sites, but that there's a very clear branding, a very clear differentiation as well with the national park, as I just said, that the language that they use is appropriate, that there is proper infrastructure as well to receive visitors, be that a visitor center or a geopark corner or a museum, and that there's that linkage made between the geology and the biodiversity and the culture. So these are recommendations that come back very often for geoparks that are being deferred, for candidates that are being deferred. Then 12 times it was deferred for border issues, and this is really something really that can actually make the decision. It can be the convincing factor to defer a geopark. It's something we all know it should be a single unified territory, but in practice we sometimes are a little bit challenged to explain or to assess whether this is now a single unified territory or not. Again, Guy will give you the details, but this is, for example, here a picture of Lanzarote, where you see the one in orange is the biosphere reserve, and one in red is the geopark. The geopark, for example, includes much more the marine sites. They also have an underwater experience in Lanzarote, so they have gone a little bit wider than the biosphere reserve, and it's important that we're looking very closely at these boundaries. The boundaries that is not too large to manage, that it's aligning with the pre-existing administrative boundaries, that is not just a collection of little sites either, and then that it includes the coastal area and marine area where this is relevant. Again, very important aspect to look into. Now, why are geoparks being rejected? It's very much the same. it's sometimes a little bit of a hard discussion whether now the council should go to a deferral or to a rejection. In some cases, it's a very clear rejection when there's a very clear breach with some of the criteria. Basically, council sometimes decides to go for a rejection because the recommendations that they give need actually another mission on the ground, and hence it cannot be with a deferral, because that would just be based on a report. There's been 14 rejections since 2016. And when you look at the aspects why they were rejected, well, it was not operating de facto as a geopark. Boundary issues, of course, as well, visibility issues, no networking activities. Very often you see as well that the geopark has developed itself a little bit in isolation, disconnected from the network, disconnected from UNESCO as well. And then you see that they actually don't have a proper understanding of what a geopark is. This is the kind of things that we would like to avoid, because nobody likes being rejected, and very often it's hard for them to come back as well with a valid application. So, I mean, how can we avoid premature applications? That's a question that I'm throwing in the group here. So if you look at the main criteria for rejection, we try to, and I thank Rania here, she tried to put this a little bit in a risk matrix where you see down below here, that's the ones that are not very likely to occur. And when they occur, they don't have much of an impact. But then you see the ones, for example, networking. Networking is something that is mentioned for all the geoparks that have been rejected. Okay, they were weak in networking. It happens often, but the weak in networking in itself is not the main reason why it's being rejected, but a weak management, low visibility, geological heritage, and then there are some of them that have really a flagrant infraction of the boundary or selling of geological heritage. Well, those are really criteria that close it, and yes, that from there on it's hard to discuss further about an acceptance. This is a little bit of a graphic overview of the applications over the last years from 2016 till today. In 2016, you see that there were a few rejections, a number of deferrals. In 2017, no rejections at all. In 2018, there were actually 7 rejections, and then none in the past years. And when I was giving this presentation last year, I said, actually, this was at the beginning. People didn't understand the statutes very well, and they were still in a learning curve. But then last year we had again a number of cases. We had 5 rejections, and I think that was one of the reasons why we said we really have to have this training again for us to understand better how we can avoid this, and also to share our experience as well with the evaluators. So that's where we are today. If you look at the sites that have been deferred, there's 34 of them that have been deferred in that period. 20 of them submitted a progress report, and 18 of them have been accepted in the meanwhile as a geopark. And actually, this line will be much straighter, because there's a number of sites that have been deferred in 2021 and 2022 that we expect to come back as well with a valid application. Just to say that a deferral is very often a very good learning experience for the actual candidate as well, and they manage to overcome it, and they come back in 2 years' time with a progress report that is convincing enough for the council to accept them. The picture is a little bit different for sites that are rejected. As I said, there were 14 rejected, and from those only 4 reapplied, 3 made it. Of course, this is not a full picture, because I sincerely hope that some of the 5 that were rejected last year, that they reapply as well, and maybe we can straighten that curve again. But I think the council expressed a very clear wish to all of these sites that were rejected, a very clear wish to support them, to help them, to coach them. And if these sites are willing to do that, then we will gladly support them. Now, still part of the mission, it is important that you discuss these different forms, the Form A, the Form B, when it's about a revalidation. But the time that you spend together with the geopark managers and that you discuss these different points, I think that's very important. So please make sure in the program that you foresee sufficient time for a debriefing as well after the different field visits, that you take your time to explain with them what you consider important, the recommendations that you want to give. You're not there just to control, but also to coach them, to help them, to share a little bit your experience. And use this time as well to seek clarifications, and don't leave anything in the gray zone, trying to find as much as possible information on the points that need to be clarified in your view. Your responsibilities, I think you all know them, but let me just remind that you have to do the application, you have to do the evaluation, of course, of the application, or the extension or the revalidation, but then as well to prepare a report for the council. And that report is really extremely important. Don't take this lightly, and I think you know this, but it is important that all the information is captured in there. Don't assume that the Geopark Council knows it or that the Secretariat knows it. All the important findings that you have seen during your mission should be captured in that report. There's something here in red that I mentioned. So you don't have the status of expert on mission, right? You don't have the privileges and immunities of the United Nations, but you're of course traveling under the flag of UNESCO. You have that responsibility. You are the face of UNESCO, and so we expect you to behave accordingly as well. And I don't have to repeat this. You know this. Independently, you're independent. Independently, it means that you serve in your personal capacity. You're not a representative of a country. You're not a representative of an affiliated entity, and you don't take instructions from a government either. Okay. So yeah, this is basically grabbing together the points that I just mentioned. And Guy will go more into the details of how to behave, keeping your integrity, being objective. I think it is important that you always keep in mind the criteria of the statutes. And this should be your guiding principle, and you should keep this. I mean, it can be sometimes tempting to be charmed by the commitment of the people, to see their drive, their dynamism, and that can somehow influence your final decision, your final judgment. But I think you have to stay very clear of what are the standards, what are the criteria of a geopark, and what I'm seeing here is that really complying with this or not. And so never take any risk, right? I mean, for us, this is the very first concern. We don't want to put you under risk. We not want to, that's why we didn't want any travels during COVID times. We're not going to send you to areas that are risky for whatever reason, for political reasons or for natural reasons. But you as well don't get yourself in tricky situations or insecure situations. So your obligations, your main objectives is, of course, that you become familiar with all the aspects of the area, that you review all these different documents that you've received, the application file, the self-evaluation file, the IUGS report. We're going to send you as well, where it's possible and where it's needed, we're going to send you some additional information as well. Sometimes we receive emails from concerned citizens. There's a candidate geopark, we're not involved, we're against this. This happens, and I think it is important that you are aware of this as well when you travel to that area. So that's the kind of information that we will receive from you as well, and that we want you to check in as well when you're there. And then, of course, again, carefully reviewing the boundaries, the threats, and the management, and provide constructive recommendations. And this brings us to the mission report. Now, the mission report is the most important outcome document, of course, of your mission. We provide a template. We think that the template allows for a sound and just evaluation, that it handles all the important aspects of a geopark. But if you think that some of the parts can be improved, we're always open, of course, to consider this. What is important for us is that it has to be sent on time, because we have to check it. We have to send it then to the council, and the council has to be able to read it. They have to have the time to read it, to get a lot of information to read prior to the council. This year, the council will take place 4 and 5 September. 4 and 5 September. This means that the last report here should reach us the 15th of August last, right? For those who are dealing with missions this year, please keep this in mind. The 15th of August is really the day that we want to receive the last report. So the different aspects, those who have done missions already, you will see that there's all the different aspects. As per the statutes, you should give a brief description of what you see on the territory, what you've seen in the application file, is that true or not, and then give a few recommendations and be creative. I mean, you can have very firm recommendations, and then you can have some suggestions as well that you think are important for them to consider. Distinguish that. But it's important that where possible, explore each time to provide good recommendations. Now the recommendations, they should be clear, and please make sure as well that all the recommendations that you give throughout the report, that they are captured in the end under this section recommendations, because sometimes we see that there are some recommendations given throughout the report that don't come back at the very end of the summary. So please double check this as well. Well, these are just a few suggestions, but have a look as well at the council report. I think there's a very diverse way amongst all of you, and of course we're all coming from different backgrounds, and we all have our different way of writing, and some are more fluent in English than others. But I think it helps if we can come back to a number of recommendations, if we know that they're recurrent, that you look, for example, at the past council reports and see how they were written, and if possible, try to take a little bit the formula of the past council reports in your mission report as well, just to uniformalize a little bit uniformalize, I'm not even sure if that's proper English, but just to make sure that we have a little bit of a uniform approach of the different recommendations. Remember as well to sign the report in the end. You don't have to sign every page, but it should be a signature in the end. And if there is information that you have found on your own prior to the mission or from the mission, things that have been given to you, please send them as well as an annex. It's important that the council receives that information as well. Okay, if there's some documents that have been given to you, if there's some formal agreements that have been signed and they handed over to you, please scan them and send this to us as well. Now, this is just one example that I'm giving here of recommendations from, this was now from an evaluation of Toba Caldera. But you see, it doesn't have to be very lengthy. We prefer that they're concise, but that they're very clear. This was a deferral, it's very clear. And then a number of recommendations with very clear instructions: increase, improve, improve. So it's very clear for the geopark that receives this, what they have to do in order to meet the requirements and in order to prepare their report. There's another one. This is a recent one here from Waitaki, but you see as well, it's a lot of recommendations, but there's a difference between clear recommendations and more suggestions. They're very clearly grouped between the different aspects of visibility, the geoconservation. So for the geopark, it becomes very clear with very clear instructions what they're expected to do to meet the requirements. This is now a geopark that made it, but they know that by the next revalidation, they're going to have an answer against these recommendations. Now, this is, you're going to, of course, you know, it's either an acceptance, it's a deferral, or a rejection. But it's an important one. It's a very important judgment. And sometimes we see that evaluators are a little bit doubting in the end. Well, we're a little bit torn. What should we do? And I think it's important, again, that you take a step back. You think again about the criteria. You look at the recommendations that you give, and then you make your judgment. Because sometimes we have to say it, and you will see it as well. Sometimes we are a little bit conservative in our approach. We say, this is acceptance, but then it comes with 23 recommendations. And some of them are very important recommendations. And then you don't do a favor to the council, because the council then has to take the decision, which makes it very incredible for the geopark to understand how is it possible that the experts that came here, they said acceptance, and the council defers us or rejects us. So I think you have to do this in all fairness and all honesty, and it's probably one of the most important parts of your job, to do this in a fair and honest manner. And I know that it's easier said than done. But it's just a slide to show you. At the left here, these are the left column are the news sites, and the right, for example, are the revalidations. So left is evaluations, right is revalidations. These are the ones that were rejected or deferred. Left, you see the council decision. Right, you see what the evaluators had suggested. And you see that there's quite a discrepancy, and there's only basically one case where actually the evaluators were a little bit more severe than the eventual outcome of the council. But in all other cases, they're a little bit more flexible, lenient, forgiving. And as I said, we would like to see this. I know that it's how would I say it? You have an important role, but the council has the final decision, and it's a responsibility of the council as well to take that decision. And the council looks at your mission report, but also at other aspects. So they're willing to take that responsibility. But I think it cannot be a far stretch. If it's from green to red, I think there is a problem, and this is what we want to avoid to the extent possible, because in some cases it will not be possible to avoid. But to the extent possible, we want to make sure that these two judgments of the evaluators and the final outcome of the council are at least a little bit, to the extent possible, aligned. You see that for revalidations, it's a little bit clearer, although, well, very often it is suggested with a green card by the evaluators. Now, this here, I mentioned it already, but the reports need to be received by the 15th of August, because the 4th we are already in the next council. And this year then is the revalidation. I can be very brief about this because it's very much the same process. It's just that then the outcome is a green card, a yellow card, or a red card, of course. The certificate looks a little bit different when we're revalidation. I will spare you the details of this, but it's then it's starting from the 1st of January till 4 years later. But we still see geoparks that are a little bit surprised that actually, oh, the revalidation mission is already taking place. We only expected you next year, and then it's a little bit of a rush. It's a bit surprising, but it can still happen. And this year, actually, some of the evaluators may have noticed that there are some geoparks where this is happening, where there was a confusion, and we hope that we can straighten that out. And so the main reasons of a yellow card, again, no surprise, but it happened 23 times since 2016, geoparks that were given a yellow card. Boundaries were mentioned 5 times, and it's strange, and it's an existing geopark, and still problems with boundaries, but sometimes they are modified. There's a merger of certain municipalities, or they have been changed without prior agreement by the council, for example. Geological heritage is mentioned 5 times as well, not being able to have an improved inventory, or not being able to protect their geological sites properly. Management is, of course, mentioned 20 times. In 4 cases, there were still no permanent geologists, for example, and that's, I'm talking about revalidations, and it's existing geoparks. So it is something to look out for when you're an evaluator, to make sure that these aspects, that you have a closer look at it. Education, partnership comes back very often. Visibility. In 7 cases, there were still problematic overlaps with nature park, natural park, World Heritage sites. So it has been very, well, and at least in 7 cases, it was one of the main reasons to give a geopark a yellow card. Selling of geological material, also mentioned 5 times. And so 5 times it was a reason for a deferral. So these are a little bit the different aspects, I think, that you have to be attentive to when you're revalidating a site. And why a red card? Well, basically 2 times a yellow card leads to a red card. And there's been 2 sites since 2016 that were in that case, and none of them have come back. So the main expectations from the evaluators, and I think I'm nearing the end of my presentation now, the evaluators must be ready to dedicate time, and we know that you're doing this. And I think that should be the baseline here. I wish to end here with my appreciation for the time that you dedicate to this, and for your experiences that you're sharing, for the timely delivery of the mission reports. We know that we're not all fluent in English, but at least the recommendations, again, have a look at the previous council reports. And if it's considered useful, I'm willing to share. I have a number of reports that I thought are really well written. And it's not only because the English is good, but it's just they were well structured, well written. If it's considered useful, I'm willing to share them and to put them available somewhere. And basically, that's the last slide where I wanted to come to. And maybe we can have a discussion about this later onwards. But we thought it would be useful as well to have some sort of an evaluation of the evaluators. And I know that this is asking a lot, because we're already asking you to conduct evaluations. And I throw it in the group here. If it would be useful that there is an evaluation from the junior evaluator by the senior evaluator, but that also the 2 evaluators are assessed from their side by the geopark. Was this a good experience? What did you learn from this? What was good? What was bad? And all of this, of course, remains confidential. And we can do an assessment as well, a very brief assessment of basically of the overall mission experience and the mission reports that we receive. And I think it's just a tool not to control and to punish, but rather to see where we have to steer, where we need to adjust. That's something that we have set up. We haven't implemented it yet, but I wanted to throw it in the group. And with this, I want to hand over the floor to Nicholas, if this is okay.
Okay, I hope that you hear me. So, first of all, I would like to thank all the participants. We have heard so many things from Christophe, a lot of information regarding the evaluations. I'm going to spend in my presentation a little bit time on the procedures for the Geopark evaluators, and then I will run for the mainly the topics as presented by Christophe before. I would like to, first of all, before to start, to thank both Christophe and the whole team of UNESCO, but also Guy Martini and the Secretariat of the Costandina for the preparation of this seminar. And I'm going to spend some time discussing with you some issues that I believe are important. All issues are important, but at the same time, I understand that we have a diverse audience with some of our evaluators who have already conducted several missions, and some other rather young evaluators who have very few missions, or even just one mission. And I know that sometimes maybe we repeat during this seminar, but I think it's always useful to have in mind all the different procedures and all the different issues that are related with evaluation and revalidation, which in my opinion is not just a procedure, is the heart of a process that makes evaluators stronger and stronger every year. I would like to repeat the words of Christophe. We don't do this for the geoparks, neither for the evaluators, for any kind of punishment, but just wishing to strengthen their operation. And I'm sure that you will agree with me that every time that we have an evaluation or revalidation mission, geoparks become stronger and stronger. We have reasons in front of the evaluation to improve our operation, our infrastructure, our activities, to work more for our geoparks, and in this way to become more effective, not for UNESCO, not for the evaluators, but for our communities, for the results that the geoparks are producing. So for this reason, it's so important, this kind of seminars, wishing to help people to go on with their activities. So these are things that already mentioned also with Christophe, that the evaluation teams should work independently to evaluate the applications and, of course, to prepare the report. The Secretariat working always in collaboration with GGN maintain the roster of evaluators, and the members of the team is chosen in order to be the most appropriate persons to do the mission. The evaluators will serve in their personal capacity and not as representatives of the respective state. This is very important. We should never forget that. We go as representatives of UNESCO, as representatives of the UNESCO Global Geoparks program, and we don't represent our state or wait any instructions from our states. And the GGN is always required by the UNESCO to ensure that the evaluators have no conflict of interest regarding new UNESCO Global Geoparks application or revalidation. This is also important because we, as Christophe said before, we need to be fair. We need not to be connected with a specific geopark and hide this connection and go there as evaluators. We need to be objective as much as we can, of course. And we need to use the criteria, the forms, the documents provided by the program. For these reasons, I would like to insist again that evaluators should not seek or accept instructions from governments or other authorities, and that's why they should not conduct missions in their own country. As Christophe said before, we have a database for the evaluators. The GGN has created this database, which is continuously updated, and we can search and find, for example, the past in the database, who has done a mission in another place. In this way, we never send two evaluators, we never send the same evaluator in the same geopark. And of course, you know the system of senior evaluator, which are more, who has done at least 6 evaluation or revalidation mission, and the senior evaluator is responsible for the mission together with another evaluator, younger, who has not the experience, and jointly are carrying the mission. The evaluators are those who have been selected after the call of UNESCO and have realized till now less than 6 evaluation or revalidation mission. And of course, they participate in evaluator seminar in order to participate in the mission. That's why we have this, this seminar. We have done other seminars in the past. Of course, some of you will say, but the previous years did not happen something like that. Yes, but I have to underline that this was the COVID pandemic period, which changed a lot in our activities. Most of the countries, as Christophe said before, are not open for missions. So in this period, we have a limited number of missions. In 2020, we had new geoparks, but no mission took place in the field, as these were geoparks who have been deferred in the past, and their applications have been examined by the Council. And in 21 and 22, we had limited number of missions, as some geoparks have to wait till their countries were open, because for us, security of the evaluators is always a priority. And of course, Christophe already mentioned about the system of the evaluation of the evaluators. This is a system that was established but not implemented yet, as Christophe said, and we want to try to implement in the years to come in order to have a better implementation of the whole system. And some tips that, of course, are necessary, I think. The evaluators do not go there to have a nice trip in a new territory. The evaluators must be ready to dedicate time to carry out the evaluation and revalidation mission by studying the number of documents related to the UNESCO Global Geoparks application and revalidations. We need to read carefully all the amount of documents provided by UNESCO Secretariat for each one of the applications. It's a pity to go there without to read carefully. And of course, a good knowledge and ability to speak fluently and understand English language is required, not only because the evaluators must submit their reports to the Council in English, but also because it's necessary to have a possibility to communicate with the other evaluator and, of course, with the members of the Geopark. As I said, we have the system of quality evaluation is based on different forms, which will be filled in by the senior evaluators, by the second evaluator, and by the Geopark. And these forms will help the quality evaluation of the of this procedure. We know that there are weaknesses, but at the same time, we strongly believe that this is one of the strongest quality control mechanism that exists nowadays. Nobody could be is perfect. Of course, nobody is perfect. But with this system of control, we think that we will achieve an even higher quality in evaluation reports and better, of course, implementation of the whole system. There is also, for in case of complaints, a commission. Of course, I know you are already you have heard a lot of things. It's not important for the mission, but of course we have, in case of complaint, there is a procedure. Till now, we didn't have this implementation, but I just want to underline that such a procedure exists, and we hope that we will not use it, but exist in case of a necessity. A few more practical things regarding the mission organization in the field. When we start a mission, we have the opening mission meeting. The Geopark should present to the evaluators the main contents of their application, and at the end, the evaluators will be invited to speak. Senior evaluator will speak for the evaluation team, should thank the aspiring Geopark for the mission organization, should ask all questions that you as evaluators think that help to get the best understanding of the candidature, and please do not make any comment on the candidature quality and future mission results. The field visit, for the field visit, please respect carefully the scheduled timing. Don't be late for departure in the morning. Respect the time schedule for each visit. Don't create delay in the program. And you can ask, for example, inside the bus, all the complementary questions that you have going from the one side to the other. On site, not look just the side, but also what is around, because it's part of the Geopark. And don't forget that we evaluate the territory, which includes all the different sites, but it does matter the environment of each one of the sites in which the aspiring Geopark teams are bringing us. Ask as much questions as possible for important issues. Check the answers with different people. Unless exceptional, problematic finding, don't ask modification of the agreed program, because the program has been agreed by UNESCO Secretariat, and it's important not to change. it's important to go and realize the mission as it was scheduled. Of course, if you identify clear risk to realize a specific activity, refuse to participate in this kind of activity. And in the closing mission, where the aspiring geopark will have to receive your feedback of the mission, please prepare carefully your speech. The night before the closing meeting, prepare, if it's possible, a PPT presenting the mission photos and your main points that could be useful and greatly appreciated by those who receive you. Highlight the positive points, but also the negative points. Share your feelings and suggestions, but don't provide any opinion concerning the future decisions, because the decisions are not of the evaluators. The decisions are of the council. And as Christophe prepared before, we have some cases where we see we see that are different the results, the proposal of the evaluators and the result after the mission in the field. And of course, don't forget to thank warmly the aspiring geopark team for the mission organization. Of course, there are, we all know that we have guidelines for the cost of travel and accommodation for the evaluators are covered by the applying area and the geopark, of course, under revalidation. And the evaluators need to assume several expenses, like the journey between the evaluator's residence to the airport parking, visa costs, plane tickets, and of course the cost of the during the mission, which of course is borne by the applicant. There are in the missions, don't forget that can be participants from national geopark committees or from national UNESCO commissions, and these observers should fund themselves. You need to be informed for the presence of observers chosen by the aspiring geopark, and of course you need to know who they are, and of course a friendly and positive relation with the observers is recommended. And now we go on to the main issue, what we are searching in these missions. We should not go away from what is written in the, we should always remember the guidelines of the program. UNESCO Global Geopark must be single, unified geographical areas. That's why it matters. The borders, as described before by Christophe and after will be described by Guy, where sites and landscape of international geological significance are managed with an holistic concept of protection, education, research, and sustainable development. While of course we know that the geopark is a territory hosting significant geological heritage, but also other forms of heritage are present in the territory and should be managed properly. Please don't forget that the geoparks are based in their geology. We cannot have a geopark just dealing with other issues and, okay, have one landscape. And that's why already Christophe mentioned, but I would like to underline that why is so necessary the appropriate management of geological heritage, and for this reason we need the daily presence of scientists who have the knowledge and the ability to manage geological heritage properly. And of course, as you know, according to the criteria, a UNESCO Global Geopark must have a clearly defined border, and the geological heritage that contains should be of international significance. Coming to the geological heritage, which is always very important, and are things that we should examine. A UNESCO Global Geopark, according to the guidelines, must respect local and national laws related to the protection of geological heritage. And the defining geological heritage sites within a UNESCO Global Geopark must be legally protected in advance of any application. This is very important to know that the sites that are shown to us are under legal protection status. Because if it's not under legal protection status, then at any case may be a risk recognized by UNESCO territory for international geological heritage may be lost, and this should be avoided. And of course, at the same time, a UNESCO Global Geopark should be used for the promotion of and protection of geological heritage, both locally, nationally, but also internationally. We are the management structures that respect, protect, and utilize this unique heritage of our planet, of the Earth, for the sustainable development of our territories. And of course, there are specific points in the checklist. Please read carefully the checklist. If there is a geopark which has comparable geology, then we should have a specific report, and also the complete and comprehensive bibliography of the territories, international and national publication and research evidence in earth science is also fundamental and helps a geopark to establish the documentation of the geological heritage of international value. We should check that. We should check also in the report that we have, the application, I mean, because a geopark which is unable to provide a complete and comprehensive bibliography, then it will be difficult to show that this geological heritage is of international value. And of course, if we have some geopark which is close to an application, I mean, close to an existing geopark, either within the same country or in the border area, then we should have a special study which will show that this site is really bringing something more to our network of exceptional sites, and that the result of the report shows that we have, maybe there are close, but there are differences that can justify why this new territory can be nominated as a UNESCO Global Geopark. It's not just a copy of the previous geopark. And of course, conservation of geological heritage is also important. That's why we should examine this and need, of course, their management structure to be involved, not only to the identification of the geological heritage, but also to the protection, preservation of this particular heritage that exists in each one of the geopark. We also know that erosion is a common natural process which affects the changing of geological heritage. And it's not always necessary to be controlled everywhere. But of course, protective measures should be developed in geological sites, which, and especially which are very important internationally, and we should take measures to avoid threats, other natural threats, other anthropogenic threats, in order to protect and enhance these natural areas. And of course, for the conservation, we need the inventory of geological sites in the application. We need a map of the geological sites which exist within the geopark territory. We should see if there is a geological map of the geopark saying the whole geological story of the area, but we should also have a geoconservation action plan. We should ask for regulations to prevent misuse and damage, to see if there is a regular maintenance and cleaning of the sites, if there are protective measures implemented from time to time, if there are conservation measures and activities, especially in fragile sites, and if there is monitoring and review of what we are doing, and if this helps the geological heritage conservation at the end. And a few examples from existing geoparks from such kind of activities. When we talk about fragile sites, we need sites with fossils. This is activities for active geoconservation of dinosaur footprint. And this is an example from Ito-Igawa UNESCO Global Geopark, when an outstanding geological heritage site, due to the geopark, has been enhanced, has been managed properly in the Fossa Magma Park. And there are many, many examples on what geoparks should do in order to protect and enhance their geological heritage site. For me, geoconservation is the only point that does not happen in other kinds of protected areas. For this reason, geoparks should give special emphasis to this process. And of course, we need to see if we provide good information, understandable by the public, because our role is not only to identify and secure the geological heritage, but also to see if this value, this heritage, is close to the local population, if the local population and the visitors of the area are guided to see something that they understand. They understand the value that is in front of them. So we should examine the quality of the information boards. We see the wording of the brochures and leaflets. Are they understandable by the wide audience or just by some specialists? Also, we should examine what are the educational programs, not only on geology, of course, but also on nature, on culture, on intangible heritage, as well as climate change and natural hazards, and how could be improved. and what is also the scientific research conducted by the geopark or in cooperation with the aspiring geopark in geosciences. It's extremely important that a geopark has established links with some institutions that supporting, because a geopark, a geoscientist can cover all the different fields. So we need collaborators. We need to use the geological services, the universities, other scientists working in our geopark, and also young students, PhD students, researchers who are conducting research in the geopark. Their outcomes may be extremely useful for our activities. So it's you see here also the checklist, for example, for education. And of course, we should work on geohazards and climate change. But we should not forget that there are other heritage in the geopark. And we should also see the natural heritage, realize the situation on the natural heritage of the area, and see how this heritage is valued, is interpreted, is promoted, and maintained by the geopark or a partner organization, because maybe it's not directly by the geopark, but by a partner organization, and is very good that. And we should check if the heritage is valued or inscribed at the local, national, and international level. And we should also investigate the relations and partnership between the aspiring geopark and the natural heritage agencies or parks or other bodies acting in the same territories. All these are covered by the checklist, and I think that we should use this document widely, because biodiversity and endemic species are very important, and we should also show why this biodiversity and endemic species are related with the geodiversity, to promote the bonds between abiotic nature and living ecosystems. In some geoparks, we have splendid examples of how they work on their natural heritage and biodiversity. For example, here in Sanin-Kaigan is the example of the reintroduction of the oriental white stork, a big effort that gives further value to the work of the geopark, and of course was a very strong point. So such good practices we should identify, and of course try to valorize in our visit. And of course, we have the cultural heritage, tangible and intangible, and we should work also on that. See everything about this heritage. I don't want to repeat what we do for the natural heritage. We should also do for the tangible cultural heritage, and the intangible one are very important issues. And this maybe give us links with other UNESCO programs. Sometimes we have other UNESCO recognitions coexisting in the same territory. So special emphasis should be given on the synergies between other UNESCO programs and the UNESCO Global Geoparks program. And of course, we should think the links between the geology and the cultural and intangible heritage. And there are many such points in our checklists. And here, for example, is an example how a geological heritage site can coexist with a secret site, a monastery. This is from central Catalonia in Spain, or this is the Mogao Groats in Dunhuang UNESCO Global Geopark in China, a very important cultural monument in a unique environment created by the Gobi Desert. And of course, speaking about intangible heritage, this is one of the examples that show sometimes how important is the connection of the geological resources with the heritage, the mining heritage, but also the way that people and the achievements of the people and the communities in the different geoparks. So there are many things that we should see, and these are not minor things, are important things, and we should always take care about those aspects. Regarding climate change and past disasters, we should see how the geoparks can contribute using the memory of the past disasters in order to prevent and save human lives. This is another activity of the geoparks. This is an example from Unzen volcanic area, UNESCO Global Geopark in Japan. And this is another example how education can help in understanding earthquakes and natural hazards in Europe, is from Lesbos Geopark. Two examples that show that geoparks can contribute especially to geological understanding of geological hazards, saving life. And of course, the management body is extremely important. The management body, already Christophe said a lot of many times about the necessity of having a strong management body, and that most of the geoparks that fail are those who have weaknesses in their management. Management is the core of the geopark, because if we have strong management, then even if there are problems, we can fix them. But without a strong management body, without the adequate personnel, how is possible to fix the problems? That's why we insist sometimes, and some colleagues say, okay, you are too bureaucratic, you want to, you insist in details. This is not details. This is not details. And we need to have a strong management body. So please check the budget stability and the structure of the management body. Check if there is a geoscientist available for work on a daily basis. Check the status of the employees of the UNESCO Global Geopark, and if possible, listed by professional categories. But also take care, because voluntary staff is also contributing significantly to the work of the geoparks. And we have many examples for that. So don't see only the employees, but see also the voluntary staff. Sometimes could be very important for the operation of the geopark. And of course, we should pay special attention reporting on the role of women in the management. If we have gender equality in the geopark operation, and of course, if local community representatives and where appropriate, indigenous people are included in the management structure. I think Guy will give a special on the indigenous people. And there are, of course, several points in our checklist regarding the management body. And of course, in case where we have overlapping of a UNESCO geopark with another UNESCO designated site, we have clearly justifications about the synergies between the different UNESCO designation, but also we should find the evidence for the independent promotion of the UNESCO Global Geopark. It's not enough to promote the area. We should promote the area as a UNESCO Global Geopark, both independently, but also in synergy with other designations that may exist. So in these cases, of course, we should check if there is a formal agreement with the other management body, if exists, a different management body for the other UNESCO designated sites, and we should see how they stand together, how they collaborate together. Several questions in the checklist. Please read carefully and don't pass them. It's extremely important to identify the synergies and at the same time to identify the independent branding of the UNESCO Global Geopark. In education activities, we should also see the infrastructure developed in the geopark for the education activities. We should examine the educational tools. We should see what kind of educational activities we have, educational activities for schools, education activities for families, for universities. Let's say if there are special training of university students, university courses within the geopark. If there are school exchange programs and activities between the geopark and other geoparks, if they are organized youth camp. Environmental education is always extremely important in geoparks. We should examine the different activities, and I would like to give special emphasis in case that we have common education organization or exchange of activities, let's say youth camps in geoparks. This is an excellent example from Moskau Arts in Germany, and there are many other such activities that we should identify during the mission, but also awarded if exist, because these make our geoparks work in synergy. School exchange is also important. This is an example from Japan and Europe with exchange of students. And this is another example from university field courses in geoparks. The last point of my presentation has to do with sustainable tourism. Sustainable geotourism should be defined as tourism which sustains and enhances the identity of the territory, taking into consideration its geology, environment, culture, aesthetics, heritage, and the well-being of its residents. And this is the core of the economic activity that makes our geoparks so successful. The involvement of local people without any doubt is very important. This is an example from Bergstrasse Odenwald, and you see volunteers involved in geopark guided tours, or indigenous people guiding in Araripe, for example, in Brazil, participating in the geopark activities. A variety of activities are developed in geoparks, and we should identify them. Are there such activities? Permit through different activities, different sports, different guided tours, different interpretation walks, but also other kind of activities. Do we permit to the visitors of the area to come closer to our geological heritage sites and the territory to get benefit from this, from hiking in different areas. This is from Jeju Island, outdoor activities. This is from Caravanken or horse riding. This is from Massif de Bose. Hot springs in geoparks, wellness tourism, very important, related with the geological structure, related with the values that we have. This is from Sanin Kaigan in Japan, or from Batur in Indonesia. Boat cruise along the coast, we have exceptional geological heritage, or in Hong Kong, coastal earth heritage and tourism. These are activities that we should value, we should examine, we should present in our reports. Scuba diving or whale watching in the Azores geopark. And finally, the networking. As Christophe mentioned, networking was a weakness for many geoparks, and we see that those geoparks who failed in their assessment, they have not exchanged with other members of this family, of this network. So it's extremely important, networking, participation. And of course, we know that the UNESCO Global Geoparks are obliged to be members of the Global Geoparks network, and through this network they pay their economic contribution to UNESCO. Geoparks should participate in the General Assembly of the Geopark Network, which happens, the Global Geoparks Network, which happens every 2 years during the International Conference on Geoparks, are obliged to participate in regional geopark networks, coordination committees, and of course conferences. They should participate in geopark national fora, in capacity building activities, in celebration of common events, and common promotional campaigns. And for networking, there are also several questions. Some events, you know that altogether with UNESCO, we celebrated the International Geodiversity Day for the first time, or for example, the World Indigenous People last year. These are some examples of the common activities, and of course, the participation of international conferences. We have the opportunity to see each other, to see the members of the network, to realize that we participate in a global family of geoparks, regional networks, and conferences, training and capacity building for geoparks. This is an example from the training in Beijing. And of course, at the end, based on the things that we have, the evaluators should provide balanced, should suggest a clear decision for acceptance, defer, or rejection. Of course, I didn't cover everything. My colleague Guy Martini will continue with other aspects of the evaluation. I would like to thank you so much for your time and participation in this seminar. And I would also like to thank you most of all for your dedication to the geopark evaluation and revalidation exercise. Your participation made this program what it is today. One of the most active, one of the most signing programs of UNESCO in such a few years. your contribution to the success of this evaluation and revalidation exercise is valuable. We know that you give your time, your effort, your heart to do this exercise and to make it as effective and as objective as possible. I would like to thank you from deep of my heart for all the years, the continuous effort, and also the young evaluators for the efforts that they are going to give in the years to come to make this program even stronger of what it is today. So thank you so much, and I hope that I didn't take all the time necessary and you are not so tired after my contribution. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nicholas, for the presentation as well. I think we have 1 hour left. And we're risked that if Guy gives his presentation now, that it brings us to the end of the time that we have foreseen, and then we don't have time for questions and answers anymore. And I think it's more useful to keep some time now for some exchanges. So if this is agreeable for Guy and for Nicholas, and I'm basically asking both of you, maybe we first ask the evaluators, the experts here connected, if there's any particular question, anything that you've heard today that still requires clarification, anything that you would like to add, anything that you've noticed during one of your missions, a situation that you've been in and that you think that was challenging, or this is something that I would like to share, anything that you would like to share with the group, I would say this is the moment. Please raise your hand, and maybe Constantina have a look as well to see if somebody is raising the hand, because I don't think I can see all the, yes, Arthur. Arthur, floor is yours.
Hello, Christoph. Hello to everyone. It's very nice to meet you all, and I think that this is a very good opportunity to share some experiences, and there are some points that I would like to share. That first of all, I would like to congratulate Christoph and Nicholas for two very good presentations that are very clear and help all of us to clarify some aspects that sometimes that there are so many things happened at the same time during evaluation that sometimes there are things that we are not able to answer properly immediately, and we need to review some of the guidelines and the procedures in order to answer properly to those that in the territory ask us about some aspects. But there are some aspects that I would like to share with you about some missions and some issues that happened to me. One of the things that I already learned since the beginning, that we need to prepare properly the mission. So immediately after receiving the documentation from UNESCO, it is time to read carefully, and meanwhile we start to prepare the mission with those that are in charge in the territory. It is important to use the knowledge obtained from the dossier, the application dossier or the revalidation dossier, and start to idealize the mission together. So it's a process that need to be done in a team. The two evaluators that are involved in process, and together with those in charge of the territory, in order to avoid unbalanced, if I can use this expression, unbalance the program for the visit. For example, a visit essentially focused on the geological heritage. is the first temptation of the majority of the new aspiring geoparks is to show, to overload, if you want, to overload the mission with visits to geosites. And in the end, many other important aspects during the mission is not possible to confirm. It's not possible even to ask, to discuss, and with the local stakeholders, with the local population, and for example, with the teachers or those in charge for the natural parks or the management of other situations. There are something also important that Nicholas in his presentation referred that those that are responsible for the mission, for example, need to reimburse us of all the costs related with mission. And when it was the plane ticket, if not directly by the aspiring UNESCO Global Geopark. Well, from my experience, and especially in two situations in Latin America, the best situation is always the buy of the plane ticket must be done by those in charge for the mission, not by the evaluators. Two colleagues that accompanied me in two missions, they suffered a lot during many months until to receive the money back. So it's something that in effect all the missions must be prepared duly by those that are that applied to become UNESCO Global Geoparks. Other aspect that several months ago I discussed with Elizabeth Silva, the former president of the advisory committee. She thought on this, and because she gave me this advice, and I think that is a very, very, very good advice that I must share with you, that every time that you depart in a mission, you must contact your embassy or your consulate in the country that when you are visiting, informing them about the time frame when you will be in the country, and if it even share with them the program of your visit. And why? Because today, as you know, many situations related with safety, we are seeing that in several countries sometimes happens strange things, and related with the natural disasters, or even with some illness that can affect you. And like Christoph informed in the beginning, despite we will go representing in a mission, and we are related with UNESCO Global Geoparks, is not, we have not a blue passport, so we have our national passport, and this could help us in several situations. This kind of things are really important, and the program, of course, of the mission is something that must be very, very important. The other situation is our contact previously, during, and after the mission need to be always very polite, very urban, and very constructive. So we need to take advantage of every situation in order to be constructive, in order to be formative, in order to share with those that have high expectations regarding the evaluation mission. It's very important to share, to give them hope, because this does not imply to to share with them that we will be in favor of a green, a yellow, or a red card is something very important. People have high expectations every time in the missions. And to finish my my intervention, to say that it's very important to strictly comply with the code of conduct. We can't accept any kind of monetary gratuity. Sometimes in some countries, people already try to pay me, not to give me money, but a per diem. And we can't accept money in any situation. We don't accept per diem in the evaluation missions for UNESCO Global Geoparks. So this is very, very important to avoid this kind of situations, and of course situations related with potential harassment or conditioning or even embarrassment situations. That so we need to be prepared to deal with this with the extreme diplomacy and try to avoid any kind of constraints and embarrassment situations for those the locals. And to finish, the questions related with responsibility and respect for the local culture. As European, I remember my first missions, for example, in Asia, that in some situations was a kind of cultural shock to me. It's something that we need to be prepared to, and this preparation need to be done previously, previously, in order to understand the local culture, in order to be prepared to face different visions of the world, even the different food that sometimes create some questions, and we need to be prepared for that. So it is my contributions for now, and I also hope to see other colleagues to share their experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Artur. I think these are very useful points. And for me as well, maybe we have to use this when we prepare evaluators. I'm thinking about the security that you mentioned there. We have to do the UN DSS, UN Department for Security and Safety basic training. It's a basic field training. And it's probably not bad if we share this as well with the evaluators. It's a short exercise, but it gives you a bit of an idea. If you go to areas that are a little bit more, how would I say, a little bit more challenging when it comes to security, that at least that you're prepared, that you know how to behave in certain situations and what to do and what not to do. And about the ticket as well, I think it's absolutely right. Don't buy any ticket yourself. Don't make any purchases yourself. Don't expect to be reimbursed. I mean, it's really the responsibility of the geopark to do it. Check as well if they send you a plane ticket, that it's really a plane ticket and not just a confirmation of a purchase, that you can actually travel with it, because we've seen examples of this as well. And then in terms of ethics, I think Guy will speak a little bit about this as well, but it's important that you're, yes, it's hard to sometimes refuse a gift, but there's a thin line between receiving a gift and an attempt of influencing your final judgment. And I think I leave this to your proper judgments, your each one in your own way, a diplomat as well. So very valid points. Thank you very much, Artur. I see in the meanwhile several hands gone up, and honestly I don't know who was first, but maybe I start with Helga.
Hello to everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think it's very useful for all of us to share, to have the inputs we have already had, and to share this experience. I complementing what Artur mentioned, that it was very good. I would put in focus the importance of being two evaluators. And the cooperative that is always appears between the two evaluators. Because when the evaluation mission is running pretty good, everything is happy and we are doing everything, but sometimes it appears some difficult situations. And in that moment, it's quite important to be a team between the two evaluators. So I think the program is very well thought, because it's not only one evaluator. We are two people there, and that is what I want to highlight, to be a team all the time, to share between us the concepts, and even how to express that, and always to be, as Arthur mentioned, to be aware that we don't know everything about that culture, and that we have to be care about what we are saying and how we are saying it. So that is my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helga, and good to see you so early. Greatly appreciate it. Maybe the next one on my list was Hartmut, I think, and then Sarah, and then Bobby's and Martina.
Thank you, Christoph, and hello from Terra Vita to everybody. I have two short questions. One is concerning the recommendations. So we came up some time ago with more than 10 recommendations, and in a way I thought it's a little bit too much, and we can distinguish between suggestions and recommendations. I heard it the first time this day that this is a possibility, so that we can distinguish between crucial recommendations and suggestions which might be done, which might be nice to have. So this is my first question. Is that a good way to deal with it and to make it very clear? And the other question is concerning the evaluation of evaluators. I really remember the discussion we had about that when it was coming up the first time. Do we have any experience how it's working right now, and how are the channels you are communicating with the evaluators if results are coming up? Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Hartmut. Let me maybe try to respond to it, and then Nicholas and others can complement. In terms of the recommendations, it's been a discussion in several councils. The number of recommendations is not a judgment of how good or how bad a geopark is. Some evaluators indeed go into great detail, but I think it would be good if there's indeed a distinction between very clear recommendations, things that you want to see changed, right? And then some suggestions, some of your proper experience that you want to share with them, because basically this will go in the letter that we send to them. You have to make sure that it's useful for them. If we stay only at very, very broad level, very generic recommendations, they may wonder how to implement this. So yes, you can elaborate on it. And I think I shared an example of Waitaki that was done by Nicholas. It was a great number of recommendations, but they were very clear recommendations and then broken down towards some suggestions. And I think that's a very good proposal. And regarding the evaluation of evaluators, well, no, we don't have experience with this unless I missed something, but I don't think we've implemented it yet. It's just something that we have designed. We've been thinking about it because we think that it can help. It gives the opportunity of the geopark itself to share with us their experience. How was this for them? Were there things that were actually that raised their attentions, things that they think that should be improved in the future? It helps as well the junior evaluator to improve himself, and it's a very confidential channel. We've designed it, we've prepared it, but we haven't implemented it yet, so there is no experience to share it. It's just I wanted to throw it in the group and to see how you perceive this as an evaluator. Do you think that we're already doing a lot of effort? It's already quite a challenge for us to do this mission, and if on top of it you're going to control us, I mean, we have to watch out how it is perceived. It's not here to control you and to punish, but it's really to see to create some sort of a channel to see how we can improve the process. All right.
If I can, yes, I would like just to add to what has been already said by Christoph regarding the evaluation of evaluators. I just want to recall that the first years of the implementation of the system, 2018 and 2019, we had to conclude with the first phase of this new exercise. And it was to have this evaluation of the evaluators for the first time in 2020. 2020 was the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, and no evaluations took place in the field. And the next years, 2021 and 2022, were rather problematic while some countries were on hold, and the whole situation was difficult to implement this new system. So I guess that now that this year we will be back to normal, we will start the implementation. I think it will be a very good tool. Till now, we haven't had the opportunity to exercise it, but we will see from the near future how this will be implemented, and you are going to have more details soon. But in any case, I guess, Hartmut, that you would know if it is implemented or not, because as evaluator, you have to participate in the evaluation of the evaluators. So there are forms that will be distributed from UNESCO and will be filled by all of us. So as evaluators, so it's obvious that we all going to participate in this exercise. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas. Next one on my list was Sarah.
Yeah.
Christoph,
Hello.
good morning to, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, good morning, everyone from Tumbler Ridge. So just to your comment, Christoph, on is it too much or is it seen as, you know, negative? I think every geopark goes through a revalidation and has growth, and so should evaluators. Should be seen in the same light. So I think it's a good step. But my comments I wanted to make was, first, your suggestion of having sample reports available. I think this is excellent, but maybe we could even take it a step further. If we could develop a sample report with a generic name like the Mountain and Volcano Geopark, you know, like John Doe, and take the very best examples and put them into one document so that we have clear direction, some examples of those very common recommendations in one place, because already there's a lot of reading and preparation for the evaluation missions. So instead of having 5, like have the real examples, but also with the template, you know, send this John Doe report. It's just an idea, but, and it could be annotated with comments. This section is great because it includes this, you know, whatever. And then just one more comment that I think this is a great initiative, this training. And maybe it would be great for every geopark going for an evaluation and a revalidation to attend the same information, especially like, you know, new geoparks, especially in developing areas, don't necessarily have colleagues to support them with developing the itinerary. They don't know what to expect. But also, as we age in geoparks, a lot of our more experienced geoparks are having turnover with management. And so new team members should also undergo this type of training. I think it would level the playing field that everyone has access to the same information. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sarah. I think two very good points. Now, the sample reports, we're not going to dump 30 reports on you, but I think when I check now and analyzed it throughout the years, I think there's like 5, 6 that I could take and that are an appropriate sample of what I would consider, what we would consider as a good report. Now, to distill the best recommendations and the best parts of that and to put that into one sample report, I think that's too much asked, because there's not one silver bullet. But since many years, at least since 2019, we try to come up with some generic recommendations, and that's why we have to find maybe a place to share not only the sample reports that we consider good, and again, I mean, there's many that are good. It's just a sample. It's not that these are the champions. It's just they give a good reflection of what we could consider a good report. But if in addition to that, I think if we share the last council reports, you will see that for the recommendations, we rewrite the recommendations that we receive from the evaluators. We rewrite them to come to some sort of generic standard language, a recurrent language. And you will see that this is each time coming back when it's about visibility, when it's about the management, when it's about the use of logo, there are some recurrent recommendations. And I think you will quickly recognize it without spending too much time on it. So asking me to make one standard template with already pre-filled recommendations, I wish I could, but I think it's not going to serve the purpose. But having a few reports for inspiration, I think that could certainly help. And then about this training, it is recorded. I have to see with Nicolas and with Guy how they see it, but I think if we can make it available, it could be useful not only for the evaluators, but also for our revalidation people back in the geopark to have a look at it and to know what exactly these experts are going to be looking at and how to prepare themselves for it. I think it would make sense for them to see this presentation as well. I agree with you. Thanks a lot, Sarah. Babis, you were next in line, I think. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Christopher. Hello to everybody. Just a few comments from my experience, which probably help at least me, but maybe some others, to prepare a good report at the end. For me, it's very important to prepare very, very carefully and in collaboration with the hosting territory, the itinerary. This is the most important part. Whenever I didn't put much attention in this preparation, I had to face some problems in the mission, and probably I had to ask for some additional visits and stops. So I think it's very important carefully to define this itinerary, and I think we should be a little bit more, let's say, careful to try and ask as many visits and stops as possible, because we have seen sometimes 4 days evaluation with only 12 or 13 stops, which means 3 visits per day. And I think it's important when we are visiting an area which is quite large to testify that the geopark exists in every corner of the geopark and not only in one certain place that we are visiting sometimes, so we are going to visit. So this can be definitely checked if we define very well the itinerary and schedule it. But of course, we need flexibility. Sometimes if we are in the field and we realize that there is something important missing from the mission, as Nicolas mentioned earlier, we can ask if it's possible to visit a certain place or to come in contact with some certain people and groups and stakeholders if it can be fixed in the agenda. What is also very helpful to me is to keep detailed notes, at least in which place we visit, because this helps a lot when we will come back, especially if some of us are doing repeat missions or 2 missions in advance, in especially different places. Then at the end, when we will come back, we may mix some information, and when we have some notes, it's very helpful to come back and read and identify the cases in certain places. And of course, it is very, very helpful to prepare the reports immediately after we come back. Because if we let some time to pass, then again, we may confuse some things. And in such cases, keeping notes is very, very helpful. So these are some of the comments that I could share with all of you, which at least for me work in most cases and are very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for sharing this, Babis. Indeed, the itinerary, it's a lot of work in advance, and we are a little bit involved as well in the sideline, but it is very essential to do this well. we sometimes see as well that an itinerary changes too often during the mission. Normally it's an indication of a poor preparation, and eventually it ends with either a deferral or with a yellow card. And yes, I definitely underline what you said. Don't write your report 1 month later. I mean, do it once it's still fresh in your head. Absolutely well taken. Martina, I think you were next in line. Thanks, Bobbies.
Thanks, Christoph. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all again. Yes, maybe I will support some previous because I agree with Hartmut, what was said, and also by Christoph repeated about the division of these, let's say, crucial recommendations from some practical advices for the team. And I even think it should be somehow structured in the report, as I also suggested or proposed during the council meeting. I think that each section has recommendation and should have also practical advices, which are not in summary. In general, summary should be just crucial recommendations, and practical report just in individual sections. That's my proposal. Another thing about evaluation of evaluators, I think it is something really necessary for our improvement. But what we have done in the past was also that we were asked by UNESCO Secretariat to send also kind of feedback on the, let's say, procedure of evaluated or evaluated geopark. I mean, how it was, the procedure, because sometimes it's extremely well prepared and they are very, let's say, open, prepared, communicative, and sometimes it's nearly tragedy. So this is something we should also continue probably. That's just proposal again. I also agree that I think it was mentioned by Sarah that some training, I mean really small digital training or online training for a team of let's say geopark which go aspiring geoparks should be somehow organized. Maybe it should be for Latin American aspiring geoparks, kind of digital workshop, how to be prepared for evaluation mission, something like it. And for other parts, other, let's say, groups of geoparks, or everybody together. But I know that Latin American aspiring geoparks, they have problem with language, with English sometimes. So this is another possibility, how to improve all the procedure. And the last, my note is about also preparation on the mission, preparation of evaluators on the mission. Because during my experience, I discovered that this is at least of the same importance and time frame as you need for the report preparation. This is reality. Because you need to communicate not only with geopark aspiring or validated, but with your colleague evaluator. You need to make possibly some online meetings. You need to go really very detailed all the material you have, Formular A and all the documents. You need to check pointage, all the points, and sometimes you disagree or you don't understand or you feel there is really something weak or missing. So you should communicate this with your colleague, with evaluator or with geopark, and you should insist sometimes that you need it in itinerary. You need to change itinerary because some not clear points in the Formular A or other report, let's say. So all this, you need like 2 weeks of your work. The same you need for report elaboration. So this is something we should stress. We understand that feedback meeting or closing meeting can't be hours, can't be, let's say, 8 hours. Because if you do it properly, you need 8 or 10 hours. So this is something we need to do before mission. with our colleague evaluator online, go through all the points, and just which is really weak or non-understandable, we should communicate with Geopark and communicate on the site, because there is no time actually to do it, as I understand. And we should insist to have feedback meeting in the itinerary. Happens quite frequently that they don't count with it. And sometimes it's very difficult to persuade them that we really need at least 2 hours, or let's say 1.5 hours for feedback meeting before leaving. So these are my points. Thank you very much. And mainly thanks for perfect presentation of Christoph. It was really fantastic, because I can imagine how many work is behind all these graphs and comparisons and so. And also for Nicolas' presentation. I would appreciate if all of us we have available with presentations. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Martina. No, the work is done by you, of course. And it's a very valid point what you're saying there. There's a lot of work that goes into it in addition to the time that you spend there. So we definitely don't take this for granted, but it's good that you underline us to take this serious, because you're going to a site where people have spent years of their own time in it and their dedication in it. And I think the least we can do is to make sure that we're properly informed when we arrive there. And yes, I know we have to take this in between our work, but to the extent possible, prepare yourself well. I'm not sure if I got your point about feedback, but you mean that you provide feedback as evaluators, you provide feedback to the Secretariat, to the Council, about how the mission has gone. What I mean is, I've seen in the past that there were sometimes sections in the report that said confidential, not for the proper distribution. And there they actually share, then the evaluators share what actually they've gone through. And I think this is very interesting and useful information for the Secretariat. But we can't use it, because if it's not public, it cannot be in the report. It's not part of the visible part of your assessment. So I've been thinking about this as well, and it's something I'm open for suggestions. But I thought as well, is it useful to have some sort of a confidential feedback after the mission? I think it's better that we keep it as transparent as possible, and whatever has gone wrong has to be in the report as well, because it is what the Council will look at when they make their final judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Alex, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Do you hear me? I hope.
Yes, Alex.
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So thank you. First of all, congratulations for this meeting. I think it's one of the most important tools to prepare the evaluations and revalidation missions, and one of the most important tool to promote the Geopark program, because evaluators are the persons which are our ambassadors to evaluate the territory and to see our eyes in the territory, and they can send us a report as objective as possible. So congratulations for that. And it's very important to train new evaluators and to have good, strong teams in the new territories or in the previous territories for revalidation. So I have, based on my experience, I have few, let's say, ideas to share with you. The first one is to have all the before, in order to prepare the mission, we need to have all the information, a part of the documents we all of us have, but we need to have the sensitive points. Some territories are, let's say, in difficult or in some social or economical or, I don't know, political positions. So we need to know the context before going there. So please, UNESCO and let's say the previous revalidator, the previous missions, or people who know something about the territory, please share the information. We need to be prepared before going to the territory and to know exactly the situation. The second point is to keep a balance between the two evaluators. Of course, it's a very good idea, and it's perfect to have a senior and a junior evaluators in order to prepare new teams and to keep the program going. It's very important to keep a balance between the two. During the mission, it's, of course, the senior evaluator has, let's say, the priority to express the ideas and to talk about. But during the mission, it's very important, and it's based on my personal experience, both of them to ask questions, to try to see as much as possible, to keep a balance between the two, and to don't have the situation of the good cop and the bad cop. Because the local people, they will have the impression that one evaluator is against and another one is more permissive, and it's more favorable. So the team has to be coherent, and the two evaluators have to talk each other before or in private, and to establish the strategy for evaluation and to share their impressions. So speaking about impressions, we don't have to go with preconceptions in different territories. There are different territories in different continents, in different socio-economical contexts. So we need to adapt, and we need to, first of all, to understand the local economical and social context, and to understand the work that the Geopark team is doing, and to appreciate this work. It's very important to appreciate this work and to sustain the team. If it's a real Geopark and a real work, of course. And we have to consider them and to support them, because we are going to meet different political partners and business partners, and all the time we need to support the local team and to promote their work and to promote the Geopark program. Otherwise, it's useless just to go and to behave as professors. We are ambassadors of the network, and we are there to help the territory, the team, and we are trying to do our best to have a good partner in our network. So it's very important to understand the local economical and social and cultural context, and to evaluate also by feeling, not only by documents, and to support them in their work, and to use the document A, document B, not as an evaluation document only, but as a tool to make them to understand what is necessary to do in future. So I think this kind of field missions are the best tools to sustain the program, and we need to take it very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. I have nothing to add. It's, I think, spot on. For your first point, if there are sensitive things related to his site and we are aware of it, normally we inform the evaluators. Sometimes we have a call with the evaluators before they go to the site, just that they are aware of it. If there is any doubt from the evaluator side, they can always call us as well, and can always contact us. But indeed, it is important that you're not going there just with the application documents, but that you have all the surrounding information. And as I said, we have received, for example, in the past, emails from concerned citizens, action groups against the geopark, and this is the kind of information that normally we would share with the evaluators as well, so that they can see what exactly is happening there in the territory. Sometimes we are aware of political tensions. We definitely inform the evaluators of that as well. But if there are any suggestions for us to improve that, we're of course more than open to that. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you.
Azir, over to you.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. Well, first of all, as everybody before me, congratulations for this workshop. I think it's very, very interesting. And also, I would like to support everything that was said by Alex. I really support his view, but I'm coming with a very specific and practical question. Alex told about the self-evaluation form, which is very useful to go through all the points that should be considered in the present or in the future for the geopark. But it is very clear for all of us that we should go through the Annex A and Annex B in the case of revalidation, point by point. And that's very useful because it brings to you all the points that should be discussed. But then I'm sure that I'm not the only one who has been into a very tricky and sometimes endless discussions when we go into the evaluation of these points. For some of them, it is very, so we have like available points, and then we have, yes, it means, let's say 30 points available. No, it means 0. So for some points, it is very clear that you can say, I mean, do you have a geological map? Yes or not, it is clear. So it's 30 points or 0 points. But there are some many other questions to me that it is not that clear. So it's kind of question like, do you do this? Are you doing this kind of things? It's not, do you have this? Are you doing this kind of things? And in those cases, it's, well, sometimes they put the maximum score, but it is your consideration that, well, okay, you are doing this, but you could do much, much more than this. So is it acceptable? Does it have any sense to score some, let's say, middle scoring? Let's say if there are 30 available points or 0, let's say, well, yes, you are doing something like this, but I mean, if you get now 30, what are you going to get in the next evaluation, in the next validation? So does it have any sense to score, let's say, whatever, 10, 15, middle?
Well, I think that the comment as here is for the previous forms, because the forms have been revised. And I think that now that the new geopark, the geoparks are using the new form, those points have been reduced. But to be honest, the score that you are putting can be yes or no, even if sometimes there it seems that it's, for example, we all know what is international exchange, but some people are trying to just get the marks without really fulfilling the point. So I think this is the evaluator that has to say no. I mean, more the problem is to find what is true or not true. And in this case, to say, okay, if you don't feel is enough, just put 0.
I think you, Azir, have probably a larger reference frame because you have probably seen more geoparks than sometimes the geopark itself. They only know their own geopark and they think that they're doing great in that particular aspect. And I think it's not a school report. If I have to compare it, my boy, he's 4 years old and he thinks he doesn't have to go to school anymore because he knows everything already. And I think it's my task to tell him, well, maybe not. And of course, you're not in a school-student relationship when you go there. But I think you have probably other examples, a larger reference to say maybe there is some room of improvement. And I think the last Form A, we've gone through lengthy discussions to come up with a solution there. I think it leaves some leeway between the 0 and the maximum score in order to play, so that there is always room for improvement, and that you can explain actually in what way they can improve throughout the years. But to give them a maximum score from the very beginning, then I mean, what's the use of that? You're not going to have a clear-cut answer on this one. I think it's a little bit the feeling as well.
No, I just wanted to know if this, let's say, concern or difficulty is shared more by more people. Nicolas, I know that the new application, which I have it here, it's more clear than the previous one. But still, we can be involved in this kind of discussions, whether we are going to give 20 points or 25 or 15 or 30, and sometimes that's not the most important thing, as we all know. But I think it would be good to, let's say, agree whether, let's say, middle-term scorings are acceptable or not, or we should decide whether we put all the available points or we put 0. My view is that we should be able to give mid scorings, because that somehow you are telling them, you are recognizing the work that they are doing, but you are telling them that they have still space to improve. That's my view.
Exactly. Yeah. But the new form has been now used for like a year, so maybe after a year or two, we can reassess again and see if there is any points to learn from this. We always said when we updated this, we always said that this is a living document and that we learn from the experience just to make it better. Kristin, hello.
Hello, thank you very much, and thank you for providing this workshop. I think I agree that it's very needed and it's very good. And thank you also to UNESCO in Paris for being so early in starting the process with the missions, because this is I could talk forever also on the document A and B, but just a short comment on that, and that is that the main thing when I work with this, I remember endless discussions, but it's very important if there is a big discrepancy between the evaluator's view and numbering and the territory, it's really a warning sign. So it's really important also to use in a constructive way how you work with this one. It's not only about 0 or maximum or medium, but to see the total. But I would like to go back to the itinerary and the interesting comment on the new territory that I'm going to plan for the itinerary. And I see this year when we have time, maybe enough time to share and to discuss the itinerary with the territory that you are going, whether it is a revalidation or evaluation mission, it's very good. And for sure, the new application need also maybe advices on the itinerary. That's good. But another issue is when we talk about changing itinerary during this mission. I would say that as evaluators, as going on missions, you need to pay attention to the local communities, to the local people, to the itinerary, to the agreements that the hosts had done with people waiting for us, for mayors, for all these things. So it's not an easy task to change during the mission. And I would say that it's better to maybe even have now a digital meeting in front of the mission to discuss and be very clear when it is agreed. It is agreed. Of course, things can happen. It can be weather conditions. Everybody would understand that, but really try to pay attention to the agreements that have been done in the itinerary. And just a short comment on notes. I think that is a very important advice from between the evaluators, or to really remember to make good notes, because now. And that is very good for sustainability, that we try to have 2 back-to-back missions in areas close to each other. It's so easy to mix the scenes, the things you have seen, the people you have met. So yes, good notes. That is a very, very good advice. So I think that was what I wanted to comment on.
Thank you very much, Kristin. Very, very good points. I think we have Sophie and Jutta. If it's okay, we may go a little bit over the time that we had initially scheduled, but if you agree with me, I would love to hear from Sophie and from Jutta before we close for today. Sophie, over to you.
Thanks very much, Christoph, and hello everybody. And again, I'd like to echo the thanks of everybody before me in terms of the use of this session today. It's excellent, and also this time to actually hear the advice and the experience from our colleagues. I just had 2 quick points, so I'll try and keep us to the timing as much as possible. The first was to pick up on this point of teamwork that Helga brought up. That is something that I do feel is really important. We are 2 evaluators on a mission. It's a very powerful thing to be able to have 2 people with different experiences and different knowledges of geoparks being able to work together on these missions. And I think in that context, during a mission, it's very helpful to be able to have some time when it's just the 2 evaluators together, when they can actually discuss and exchange opinions, and not to be afraid to ask for that to go into the itinerary as well, because when there is the final meeting at the end with the points to present and the debrief for the territory, it's very, very important that both evaluators are able to contribute to this meeting, and that they're both able to agree and to bring their points to the table. We are working as a team, and it is a very important thing to have that ability to prepare. The second point was just an alert with regard to this notion of recommendations and suggestions. And I'd like to very much endorse what Martina said about the necessity to distinguish between them. Recommendations are extremely powerful. They're very constructive. They're very useful in helping a geopark to progress. They are things that territories do act on with a lot of energy and a lot of commitment. And I think suggestions can be extremely important in helping us look different ways at situations and challenges, and maybe bringing a new perspective on things and helping things move forward or making improvements. But when you have a lot of recommendations or a lot of suggestions, it becomes something that can be difficult to manage within the context of a territory. So I think the clear distinction between what is a suggestion and what is a recommendation would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. It's a very valid point, and it came up several times, and maybe we have to reflect on this as well, what instructions we give to evaluators, so that we can clearly distinguish what are the recommendations and what are the suggestions for consideration, let's say, because it is a recurrent discussion as well in the council. It certainly should be clear from the report, because as I said, it's also what we're sharing with the geopark, and it's what we're going to control themselves against 4 years later down the road. So that's a very good point. Jutta, if we may close with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christoph, and hello to all of you. I also really appreciate very much our exchange. It's very useful, and I would like to refer to your comments regarding us as evaluators when we come to a territory, that we come on behalf of UNESCO, not on behalf of our geoparks or on behalf of the country, because I think sometimes it's not clear for the territory. We come and they say, oh, this is, let's say, Sophie from Chablais, or this is Jonna from Natotesio, and not this. These are the 2 inspectors on behalf of UNESCO who do the revalidation. And this makes it also sometimes difficult for the people on site, because they think, oh, here come just friends. Maybe it would be helpful to clarify that a bit more for the territories themselves, because this makes also the revalidation more valuable for all of them, and not just, oh, 2 people come whom we know for years, because we come in another function than just being part of, let's say, a coordination committee or whatever. This is the first point I would like to highlight. And then the second is the documents which we have been sent by the Secretariat. Sometimes they were not complete, or sometimes they were in a shape where I thought, oh, how could they have been accepted? Because some documents or some important aspects are missing. And then I was told, so they have submitted and we have accepted, and that's it what you get. And then we came to the territory, and maybe sometimes we got additional information, sometimes not, sometimes the documents were different to what we have got through UNESCO. So we see two different versions of a progress report. So this is also difficult to handle, because on the one side, it's good to get additional information, to gather additional information, but let's say the basic asset of documents sent by UNESCO and available by the territory, because they have submitted it through the official channels, it should be identical, I think. So this is a note. And the other aspect is also regarding the evaluation team. I think it's difficult for a territory if they realize that the evaluators are in contradictory discussions in front of the territory and the partners. So they should be in accordance, and if they have points of discussion, they should postpone it to the evening and have a private discussion. And maybe if there is a spontaneous reaction necessary, then it should be done by the senior evaluator and not by the junior, because often the senior has much more experience and can look at the situation in a different way and can decide maybe a bit more calm and a bit more diplomatic than the junior, which is not a value about the quality, but it's just a question of experience. And another point is that the tasks should be shared, let's say, relatively equally. I know that we as seniors have often also the major parts of the reports. This is some kind of normal, but also I would like to mention that it's good that we can share the tasks a bit more equally. And another aspect is regarding the let's say, the confidential aspects. Sometimes it occurs that you meet partners on site and you take photographs, and afterwards they say, oh, we cannot be a part of this photograph, and because it's complicated in a political sense also. And I would like to mention that the territories should be clear that the partners whom we meet allow and agree that photographs of them are taken, and that they are published also officially on the UNESCO website, because otherwise it does not make sense to make photos. So maybe that's, okay, the application forms A and B, the final meeting, for me, it's very, very important and very helpful, because the territories sometimes underestimate themselves, and during this process, it also becomes clear that they often do not really understand what the application forms mean. It's independent of all the explanations they have got in advance. And therefore, it's, let's say, a very important part of the finalization of this validation, and also of the parallel consultancy, which is going on all the time during such a mission. So I think this is all from my point of view, and I would like to thank you all for these inspiring comments, which are really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jutta. These are points that are very well taken. As a secretariat, indeed, we have this obligation to make sure that we have a complete file. That's the first one. That's clear. In addition to that, of course, we try to make sure that the file makes sense as well. And that's why there's a lot of back and forth before we actually send the documents to the evaluators. There's a lot of back and forth between us already and the application. And I can imagine that there may have been some mix-ups in the past, or that it was not clear what is the old file and what is the updated file. But we will certainly pay attention to make sure that you have a complete and a full set. I've also been playing with the idea to do much more work with the council prior to the missions, actually, because there's been things in the past like strange names, geopark being close to another geopark. There's things that we could have noticed. And here we're only 2 pairs of eyes, 3 pairs of eyes with some luck. But if you have the council members look at the documents as well before that, I think we have an extra barrier, an extra check before we actually engage the evaluators for the mission. So these are all very good points, well taken. Regarding the confidentiality, I think this is something that we could as well integrate in the documents and the communication that we send to sites so that they're aware of this. I think it's just it's not a disclaimer, but it's just a very clear line that they know that pictures will be taken with people on it. So the people, if they don't want to be on the picture, they shouldn't be around either. Agnello, I actually wanted to stop here because there are some people in Japan and in Korea for whom it is very late already. But if you have a few short comments, may we stop with you when we end with you then?
A quickly question, only quickly. I want to clarify a situation in Italy. All Italian geopark are national park or regional park. Only Rocca di Cerere is another situation. In Italy, the national park and the regional park are under Italian law, and it is impossible to have in all Italian geopark a separate budget or separate staff. The staff of national park or the budget of the national park are the same of geopark. So it's impossible to have a separate situation because the national law is clear. It's impossible for national law. So during the evaluation or re-evaluation, I want to clarify, this is the situation. It's impossible to ask us every time that we must have a separate budget or separate staff. It's impossible. It's impossible. Okay. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Agnello. I know the situation is complex and it should be clear. I think it's a point that requires maybe some discussion with the evaluators before they go to geoparks, be it in France or in Italy. There are some recurrent cases where there are particular cases indeed that they have to be aware of before they travel there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. I think we have to close here. I hope we can meet each other again tomorrow at 12 noon GMT. We will continue then with the presentation of Guy, who will build on the other aspects, who will go into the details with some concrete cases. And then there's a number of senior evaluators, experts who have agreed as well to give a brief presentation in order to trigger again a discussion like we had today to end then with a short test. So thank you very much for your time today. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. We've taken very well note of what you've said, what you've shared with us. We will integrate this to the maximum in the different documents and in the governance and the process. And looking forward to meeting you again. Have a nice evening and see you tomorrow then. Thank you, everyone.